Yorkshire. And that's just stemmed from a belief. So a lot of the things I'm going to discuss now is pretty much what you've covered, and it's how I've applied it in my life to benefit me, and how you guys could essentially do it for yourselves. But there's also going to be some useful tools for yourself, but also how you can recognise employees' behaviours and mental health as well. Before we move on to cookie jars, has anybody come across the analogy before? Cookie jar? You have, I didn't hear. Do you want to tell me what your thoughts are on a cookie jar?
It depends which way you look at it, but you kind of start off the day with a full cookie jar of beautiful, lovely favourite cookies, and then as you go through the day, you meet lots and lots of amazing, lovely people, and you go, here, have a cookie, here, have a cookie, here, have a cookie.
Awesome.
And then by the end of the day, you look and you go, I have no cookies left.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great, useful tool. We're going to touch upon that similar. I've got another tool which is similar, but my cookie jars is slightly opposite to that. But as long as you like cookies, you'll be fine. So, for me, the cookie jar is a psychological analogy. And how I came about the cookie jar is I like to watch motivational videos every morning, something called impact theory, and it has guest speakers on there that talk about their lives in entrepreneurship and motivation. And I stumbled across a guy called David Goggins. Put your hand up if you've heard of David Goggins, anybody? A couple of people. Perfect, so you might have seen the video yourself. And he pretty much talks about, just to give you a little bit of story about him, he's an ex-Navy SEAL Marine. He's got the world record for doing the most amount of pull-ups. I think it's over 1,000. He's won loads of Ironmans. He runs 24-hour marathons, and he's pretty much just a machine. So after watching this guy, I wanted to emulate some of his habits and see what I could bring from his life into mine. And he talks about this cookie jar, and he talks about loads of trauma that's happened in his life. You know, he was racially abused as a child, he was overweight, he was pretty much everything that you could stereotypically believe happened to a child. And he overcame all of that to become, like I said, this great man who achieved lots of different things. So that's a bit about David Goggins. But what he talks about is how his cookie jar helped him to overcome adversity when he faced challenges in his life or in his place of work. He could always resort to his cookie jar, use it as a coping mechanism to kind of leverage himself forwards and excel himself. And he talks about pretty much when you go to the gym, you might lift lots of weights and you form callus on your hands, and the scar tissue is a representation of the challenge and the difficult times that you experience when you're doing the lifting. However, what comes after that is strength, more muscle, and stuff like that. And he kind of uses it as a psychologically, whereas instead of having callus on your hands, you kind of form scar tissue on your brain, and you put these memories in a certain place, and you can always revert to them to kind of, like I said, you used to think, I'm not going to let this stop me, I'm going to overcome this, and I'm going to be a better, stronger person for it. So it's just creating anchor points throughout your life. And I started doing this from birth all the way to where I am now, and kind of plotted the anchor points or the memories that were traumatic, challenging, difficult, and I thought that's actually what's made me become who I am today. And after doing that, it was really good self-awareness for myself, and it was a really good useful tool where if I come across anything challenging now in the future, I know exactly to go to my cookie jar. I've been through this before, and I can overcome it. So it can trigger emotion, which encourages to act upon something. So a lot of you, if you're feeling angry, you might throw something. If you're feeling upset, you might cry and do something differently. If it, pretty much emotion triggers action. So rather than resorting to just acting sporadically, if you can use an anchor moment or a cookie in your cookie jar, you can reflect the actions that will then foresee that. And it's all about making a choice not to self-sabotage. Does that make sense to you guys? Good. I want to tell you. Sorry.
Can you give us an example?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm going to do next. I'm going to share some of my cookie jars, some of my cookies in my cookie jar. But before I do that, actually, has anybody got any examples of difficulties in their life that they'd like to share? What can you guys think of? What might you put in a cookie jar? Anybody want to share some cookies?
Being bullied at school.
Being bullied at school. Perfect. Any others?
Having a big operation, recovering from it.
100%.
A bad place and get to a good place.
Yeah. Good one.
Death.
Sorry?
Death.
Death. Yeah, massively important. That'll come across in the cookie jar. yeah, all of these things, I'm sure everybody will go through in some form of their life, and it's how we use these coping mechanisms to kind of override it and come through the other side. So a bit about my cookie jar. I'll just tell you actually. I won't go to the next slide just yet. So I was actually a premature baby. I was due to be born in September, and I was born 4 weeks early in August the 4th. So off the back of that, I suffered with acute breathing problems. I was asthmatic, so I was always on a nebulizer, in and out of hospital every 3 months with asthma attacks and everything else. Going through childhood, didn't bother me at the time, to be honest, but just giving you a background. So I put that in my cookie jar to say I was premature, physically I wasn't a well baby. And then growing up, my mum and dad were he was physically abusive to my mum, so I suffered domestic violence. He then left when I was 4 years old, which is another part of the cookie jar. Then after that, my mum became an alcoholic up until I was 16, so I put alcoholism in there. We then got evicted at 16 from our house because she couldn't pay the rent. She was an alcoholic, she was depressed, all the rest of it. So I put that in the cookie jar. Cut a long story short, I ended up moving to my dad's house when I was 16, and we didn't have a great relationship because he had me when he was 15, so he didn't know how to be a father, so he was more like an older brother to me. So that's in my cookie jar. And yeah, other stuff, like I said, surgery, I've had major operations, so stemming on from the breathing problems. When I was 11 years old, I suffered a rare disease called actomoniasis, which is pneumonia. It causes a symptom, and then once they treated the pneumonia, they found out that this actomoniasis is a bit like, they thought it was cancer, they thought it was a tumour. It pretty much spreads and takes over your whole body. Fortunately, the doctors managed to remove a piece of my lung, give me antibiotics for a year and a half, and then it got rid of it and made a full recovery. So those are sounds a bit overwhelming and a bit daunting. But what I wanted to share with you is that there's some of the stories that obviously I put in my cookie jar, and what I can learn from all of those things is that every given point I never gave up, and I refused to be abusive because of the things that happened with my father. I refused to be homeless ever again, or have to go through that situation. In terms of health, I refuse to be unhealthy, so I'm always going to the gym, I eat healthy, I drink plenty of water. What else did we talk about? Yeah, pretty much all of it. So I refuse to just go through any of those emotions that I've been through before, and after each kind of cookie that happened, I've kind of leveraged myself forward, learned from it, and propelled myself forward. So alcoholism was one that I forgot, but I refuse to drink. I only drink on special occasions, birthdays and stuff like that.
It's someone's birthday every day now.
Knowing that, So yeah, that's a bit about cookie jar. And I want you guys to think about how, as an activity, if you go from your birth to where you are now, there's 3 points in every person's life that dictate how they got there. And it's really good to show kind of your journey and where you've come from. And like I said, if you've got employees that you manage, you might see behaviours or traits or mental health. It's a good way to acknowledge what they might have been through as well. So that's how I identified cookie jar, and that's how I've used cookie jars in my life. And it's, like I said, it's a powerful tool now for me, rather than thinking, oh no, this has happened, feel down and out about it, self-sabotage yourself, use it to kind of leverage yourself forward. And just to summarise it all, pretty much, scar tissue, for example, we talked about surgery. If you have a scar, rather than covering it up and hiding away and not being prepared to show anybody, why not embrace it, show the world it's made you stronger. Scar tissue is a lot stronger than normal tissue. So that's what I wanted to take away from the cookie jar. Everybody happy with that?
Mm-hmm.
Good, any questions?
What are the 3 stages?
3 points in your life to change. So for me, the health, so breathing problems, that gave me great health after that. Alcoholism, my mum being an alcoholic, made me never drink unless it's like those special occasions. And then